Excellency Abdul Basit Saab, one of Pakistan's most distinguished diplomats. It's a privilege to be in a panel which you are chairing, as it is a privilege to share the stage with three speakers who have been most individualistic in their respective perceptions and presentations. Arifa Noor chose to be unduly brief, and for a woman presenter who's one of the finest and threatened to leave, fortunately, she's still sitting here, as is Mr. Hamid Mir, who also opened with a threat to leave, but is still here. And I have a feeling, while I am going to inflict some unprecious thoughts on you, both of them will walk out as a sign of their total disagreement with me. But we will still have the Honorable former Foreign Minister, Mr. Khurram Dastagir, who also presented, I think, an unusually candid set of observations. He was discreet enough not to name the particular political party which was in office when certain events occurred and certain omissions took place in our policy. That's understandable. And in contrast, Mr. Hamid Mir was most unusually candid, which is so refreshing. It is very necessary to name the elephant in the room, which is the military in Pakistan. The military in India also exerts an extraordinary influence, despite the fact that they have not intervened in the political sphere, which is very commendable of India not to let the military intervene. But a militaristic mindset pervades Indian foreign policy making. And no decision on India's deployment of troops or India's opening up to Pakistan or China can ever take place without the consent of the Indian military. The Indian military has sometimes vetoed decisions that were taken by civil foreign ministers of both countries. And alas, when those civil foreign ministers went back, particularly the Indian one, the Indian military vetoed that, whether it was Siachen or whether it was a rapprochement on Kashmir. May I just begin by saying, with respect, Track 2 is not a betrayal of the people or the peoples between whom Track 2 takes place. Each participant of a Track 2 process is a loyal, dedicated, committed, if I want to use the word patriotic, it might sound overextending one's sense of loyalty. Every citizen who participates in Track 2 is a committed nationalist. And there is no intent to betray the people's interest or the national interest by simply participating in Track 2. The idea of Track 2 was born in 1982, this phrase, by a US State Department officer called Joseph Montville, who wanted to give a concrete expression to the hard fact that apart from diplomatic interactions already were taking place between non-officials. So he thought about this and he formulated the term Track 2. In fact, before he formulated the term, the Dartmouth conference between the US and the Soviet Union was using Track 2 to prevent their relationship from approaching a crisis point. And soon after, well, not soon after, perhaps a decade and a half later, the Oslo process, steered by Norway and steered in order to promote the prospects of peace in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinian movement, took place. My own humble association with Track 2 started in 1992, early 1992, and lasted for about 23 years until, with the advent of the BJP government, it was stalled by the Indians. Otherwise, it remained in place for 22 plus years. And it was not secret, it was not back channel. Both governments knew what was happening. They had to issue visas. How would they not know? And after the first 2.5 years, when the Ford Foundation and the Americans sponsored the costs, both groups decided we can afford to bear the costs ourselves. Why should we be dependent on the Americans or any foreign country to bring us together? So the funding became indigenous, and in place of a very competent American diplomat called Paul Kreisberg, we had Mr. Niaz Naik, an extremely accomplished former foreign secretary from Pakistan, and Mr. C. Rasgotra from India, also a former Indian foreign secretary, as the two co-chairs. And this process, when you look back on it, despite the sabotage by the BJP of even a Track 2 process, soon after it came into power, managed to survive the popular uprising in Indian-occupied Kashmir in the early 90s. In fact, Track 2 addressed that. It managed to survive the Kargil crisis. It managed to survive the nuclear crisis of 1998. It managed to survive the terror attack on Bombay in 2008. It went on even after that. Earlier, it also survived the attack on the Indian Parliament, which was another false flag operation in which Pakistan had not played any part. December 2001, I think was the date. So, Track 2 between Pakistan and India actually was sustained. Both groups used to meet the respective foreign ministries before each round, receive a briefing. The groups comprised individual, independent citizens of stature, excluding myself. I had no stature, but we had outstanding economists, academics, former generals, nuclear experts, national security analysts, a whole spectrum of 8 or 10 people from each side. And we were agreed that we would not talk to the media, not in order to bypass parliament, not in order to bypass governments, but you simply cannot discuss hypersensitive issues under the glare of media, because media's job is to second guess. If someone is saying A, media has a natural tendency to say, why not B? And they're entitled to that. But that doesn't make for negotiation or listening to each other with patience, which is what Track 2 is all about. Listening to each other without making accusations or raising suspicions about your sincerity or your integrity. And Track 2 actually managed to eventually expand and become a composite dialogue. It started with discussions on Kashmir and on the military-to-military problem, but expanded to include the nuclear issue. It went into depth in the economic realm. It talked about Kashmir frontally, but also creatively. And we then evolved the basis on which the 4-point formula was eventually adopted. And we wanted no credit. We didn't hold a single press conference for 22 years. But both foreign ministries knew exactly what had happened in each round, lasting 2 to 2.5 days, either in Islamabad or New Delhi, once in Lahore, once in Karachi. And as a result, one doesn't want to claim credit for it, But that 4-point formula, regardless of how the Indians unwisely want to sidetrack it today, represented good common sense. Allow me to paraphrase it or adapt it according to my recollections of what it was. The first one was dialogue, not just India-Pakistan dialogue, but a quartet dialogue. By a quartet, it meant India, Pakistan, and people from Indian-occupied Kashmir and people from Azad Kashmir, who had always been bypassed. So the first thing was dialogue. In a comprehensive sense, listen to each other. The elected representatives of Indian-occupied Kashmir and of Azad Kashmir, along with India, Pakistan. And the second was devolution, authentic devolution of power from New Delhi to Srinagar and from Islamabad and Rawalpindi to Muzaffarabad. Because despite Azad Jammu and Kashmir being officially a separate state, its territory is not part of the Pakistan Constitution, unlike the Indians who made Kashmir part of the Indian Constitution. But the second was effective devolution of authority and power, which would also enable, for the first time, what we suggested was the trans LOC bus. And we devised the method by which, instead of a visa, travelers could carry a simple, unheaded document which would enable them to cross into Indian-occupied Kashmir and vice versa. And the third was delineation. By delineation, we meant, let us agree when we say Jammu and Kashmir. What do we mean by Jammu and Kashmir when it comes to India-Pakistan? Are we including Ladakh? Are we including Gilgit and Baltistan? Are we including Jammu? Indians will say Gilgit-Baltistan has to be part of unresolved issues of Jammu and Kashmir, and Pakistan would not agree. They would say the same thing about Ladakh. So there has to be agreement on what are we talking about. What is the exact territory when we say Kashmir? What is Kashmir? Is it the valley where Muslims dominate? Or is it Jammu where there are plenty of non-Muslims? So there was a need for delineation. And the fourth was, once these three things take place and confidence increases as you keep talking to each other, listening to each other, graded demilitarization. Indian-occupied Kashmir is the most militarized region in the entire world. When you compare the presence of 600,000 to 700,000 troops to the population, no other part of the world has such a huge concentration of armed troops. We, for our part, do not have that dubious honor of concentrating all our troops into Azad Kashmir or to across the line of control. But there is a need for gradual confidence building by reducing the militarized component. Now more than ever in 2025, not because I'm looking for something better to do, paying enough attention to my dear wife is a full-time job, by the way, and I should be doing that rather than inflicting my thoughts on you here. But now more than ever is there a need for track 2. And Pakistan is ready for it, but plus the Indians, of course, they won't be ready for it. I mean, the behavior of the Indian mindset which has been revealed, the pettiness is pathetic. For a state so large, it has a heart so tiny. I mean, it is a physical giant and a moral pygmy. And that's disrespectful of pygmies. Because what is the matter with India? Why is it so insecure? So inherently insecure. And that brings to mind an issue larger than India, which is the problem of asymmetry. And you know what asymmetry is? Disproportionately different sizes between immediately present or generally present other units. And we are living in a very bizarre age where three robust democracies are all suffering from asymmetry. The United States is a shining example of asymmetry. The only country in the whole world with 800 military bases encircling the planet. My God, talk about insecurity. Or shall we say hegemony. It has military bases in the Pacific. It has them in Vigo Garcia, has them in Oman, hasn't left any part except Russia and China. And China, which is accused of having an expansionist vision, barely has a civil presence in a single port near Djibouti in Africa. Look at the asymmetry. Plus, the dominance of the US economy, the dominance of the dollar, all banking transactions of around the world, 60% to 70% have to be cleared every day in New York. Very unhealthy disproportion, which becomes a threat to all the other countries of the world. But the US is ably accompanied by India. My God, what an asymmetrical nation. If you compare it to South Asia's other nations, a disproportionately huge population, now overtaking China, territory, 7-8 times that of Pakistan, leave alone Maldives or Sri Lanka, a huge coastline, and even encompassing islands like the Nicobar and Andaman Islands, which are really part of Southeast Asia, arbitrarily allotted to the new India post-1947 by the departing British. A travesty which has given India a totally unhealthy appetite for maritime hegemony and expanding its maritime fleet into what they call the Indian Ocean. I think we should call it the Asian Ocean. So the asymmetry of India is best evidenced by what Ahmed Mir has already told you. I mean, the sheer arrogance of building a new parliament building in New Delhi and of creating a map which has the brazen effrontery to include the territory of 7 other member states of the United Nations. And I haven't heard a word of condemnation on this travesty of international law and norms and etiquette from any Western power or any Southeast Asian power, which brings me to this terrible obsession about India's size and India's market. Oh, they're so big. They matter a great deal. I mean, what is this Indian phobia that people have developed? The inability to say what needs to be said and to point out whether it's the world's most powerful country or the world's middling power. The truth must be told. And the third is also a democracy, but there is a negative symmetry there, a negative asymmetry. And the example is Israel. Israel, total population, 9.6 million people. 9.6 million people. 7.5 million Jews, the rest non-Jews. 9.5 million people in Israel. Pulverizing 450 million Arabs. My God, how has this country, even if Uncle Sam and Auntie Sally and everyone has been helping Israel, you've got to give it to them. Zionism has galvanized this very, very small population to develop the extraordinary intelligence, commitment, capability to paralyze 450 million Arabs and 22 countries. And they are wreaking this barbarity on Gaza every day. And certain Arab countries are busy chasing free market capitalism. So much investment, so much tourism, women being liberated as if they're doing women a favor. What's the favor? They've kept them under bondage for centuries. They relate to them. So how does Pakistan face this? And I come to the last part. How does Pakistan deal with this? First of all, I think we have to realize, and it does need to be realized, we know that there's nothing we can do about India. Even if the BJP loses the next election, the Hindutva disease, the virus of Hindutva has already infected the Indian psyche. Even though BJP got only 38% of the popular vote in the last election, and it reduced the number of seats because of our absurd first-past-the-post system, where you may not get the majority vote and yet you get a majority of the seats. So they are back in power on third time. But even if BJP is not there, there are elements of the Hindutva psyche in the Congress party and in the non-BJP parties. And now it has become so widely spread through social media and the hysteria of Indian news media that post-BJP, we will still have a very adversarial, latently hostile neighbor to deal with. So, should we get obsessed with it? No. Much as it may be difficult to do, we have to do a fundamental paradigm shift. It will take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. But we have to disentangle ourselves from this obsession with India and start to build and get to know China much better than we do. We are still too Western-oriented and West-obsessed. Children want to go to US universities or go to London, speak English. How many Pakistanis speak Chinese? The one country that has stood with us loyally, consistently for all its existence. Never wavered. We don't even speak Chinese. We know so little about China. What a tragedy and an irony. We have to get to know China, get to know the people of China, get over our inhibitions about learning Chinese, or even if you don't learn Chinese, get to know their literature, their culture, their history, their poetry, their aspirations, and what a merit-based society China is. President Xi Jinping, son of a major leader of the Communist Party, when he applied for membership to the Communist Youth League, his application was rejected. Sorry, you don't come up to the level. He made not one, he made 8 attempts and failed. That's how merit-focused the whole system of China is. Merit alone. And he was allowed to become a member after 9 attempts and rose to become head of state, purely on individual ability, not because his father was a leader at one time. So we have to go beyond this region, become more Central Asia specific. An excellent session before this session, we got to know so much about Central Asia's potential and West Asia's potential, which we have not really tapped. And as per SN was, of course, more focused on the Middle East, but he also referred to the vast potential that exists, and not just economic. We have to rediscover our cultural affinities with these countries, and not just on the religious side. Culture is not just religion. Culture is about how you live. So what makes you sing? What makes you dance? What makes you admire something? So the cultural reorientation of Pakistan into transcending the limitations of South Asia and looking into a new vision. Will that be enough? I don't think so. Because internally we have a great agenda to resolve. Some of those issues have already been identified. I won't repeat them. One central issue is the need to strengthen the civil political segment of Pakistani society. We don't want to weaken the military. We cannot afford to weaken the military. The military itself will not agree to be weakened. Even though General Bajwa 3 years ago announced publicly at the Islamabad Markala dialogue, security dialogue, that they have a plan to reduce the numeracy of Pakistan's armed forces by 400,000 people. A remarkable statement, but nothing has been heard about it since. So we need to strengthen the political parties, none of which take the time and the trouble to focus on security issues. They keep ceding space to the military. You come and handle it because you will do it better, which is shameful. I think the political parties of Pakistan need to do much more homework, study much more, publish more regularly, doctrines, study papers, research papers. What is happening to artificial intelligence? How will it impact defense and security and the economy? So much to do. And we have the talent, we have the capacity. Pakistan is enormously gifted. We underestimate ourselves. We are constantly demeaning ourselves and saying, oh, the country is going nowhere and some youth are migrating. Oh, you should look at the number of youth from India who are migrating out of India. If India is supposed to be the great success story, why are thousands and thousands of Indians abandoning their wives and running off to Europe and America and never coming back? Read the New York Times of 7 months ago. They did a detailed survey of thousands of innocent, newly married women abandoned by Indian men who ran away with their dowry and have disappeared. So migration should not bother us. We need to learn from our strengths. We are an extraordinary nation, the most uniquely created country, and we should look at a new world with greater confidence. Thank you for your patience.